All right, everybody, welcome to another simulcast. We're live here on the YouTube channel as well as recording audio only for tomorrow's podcast. I appreciate you joining me. What a crazy evening, one I don't think anybody saw coming. Not in a sense that the Sharks could win Game 3, but exactly how they did it. A 2-0 lead after 20. They got outscored 4-1 in the second period. They got one so late with less than a minute left in regulation in the third period to tie it up. Sharks had pulled Martin Jones, the extra attacker. Thornton saw Pavelski and Couture out front. Logan Couture now 14 goals on these playoffs, leading all scorers, and just a crazy run of playoff goals he's had since 2010. He's now at, 48, just 2 behind Alexander Ovechkin. And then 5:23 into overtime, Erik Karlsson, he bookends the game with a goal to start it and a goal to end it. Those are Erik Karlsson's first 2 goals of 2019. No, not just of the Stanley Cup playoffs of 2019. I'm talking about we're 2 weeks away from the middle of 2019, and those are Karlsson's first 2 goals. Now, he was hurt for a majority of that time and has not been a big goal scorer this season for San Jose, but just the fact that he's been close, the fact that he's probably deserved a goal or 2 along the way, and finally got the 2 huge ones tonight. So cool to see 65 be on the score sheet in that way. Okay, tons of controversy with tonight's game. The result, the overtime goal. Let me just backtrack and say that if we're complaining, if we're questioning, if we're talking about officiating at all, it's not a new conversation. And we should be talking about officiating because clearly St. Louis feels like it was a hand pass that was missed, couldn't be reviewed. The officials literally got chased off the ice by Blues players, and I understand the sentiments in St. Louis right now. I wonder if St. Louis understands the sentiments when David Perron cleared a puck over the glass. There was no call. That could have put the Sharks on a power play. Instead, St. Louis goes on to score a couple more goals and have a very one-sided second period. Momentum completely taken away from the Sharks at that point. How about Sammy Blais when he hit Justin Braun up high in the third period? And there might be supplemental discipline. Like Sammy Blais might miss Game 4 of this series. I don't know. But certainly in a 4-3 game and a 1-goal game, the Sharks don't even get the chance to go on the power play. So again, just to show you here that there's been a lot of back and forth. I would also say, in all fairness, that of the 16 teams that started these Stanley Cup playoffs, I'll bet you eight teams right now could put together a pretty impressive presentation of bad calls that didn't go their way, where they got robbed. 8 teams out of 16. There's only 4 left, and 4, of course, could put this together and not even be in it in these playoffs right now. But my point is, it's not a good thing. It's not a good look for the league to have so much question about officiating to the extent that like half the teams out there right now could have legitimate complaints. And the St. Louis Blues could probably have a legitimate complaint, at least at the end here of Game 3. I'm not going to speak to their prior series because I wasn't as thoroughly invested in those. But it's not a good look for the league to have these very showcase moments clouded with questionable officiating and calls that had evidence but couldn't be reviewed. It's not complimentary, but I do want to play you a clip from Joe Pavelski. I feel like after the game, he said this better than anybody could as it relates to officiating, in a sense that they're not out to get one team or another. They just have a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, you know what? There's a few calls. You're going to get them. You're not going to get certain ones. Everyone keeps talking about the hand pass, so there must have been something there. But at the end of the day, there were calls that go both ways. That's the playoffs. There's adversity. You always got to adjust and handle it and keep her cool. And at times we've done a great job with it, and at times we could be better. So, it's always just a lesson that at the end of the night, it's all about the wins and losses. If you get the extra call, great. If not, you really have to, just keep playing because, they're not trying to screw anybody. They really aren't. They're good guys.
The clip ends right there. It's on my Twitter page, Twitter feed too. Joe Pavelski, the politician, to a certain extent. And I agree on this. You have to earn your breaks, right? For example, the Sharks aren't even in an overtime situation if Logan Couture doesn't score with 59.6 seconds left. It's a fact, right? So the Sharks made their break happen. They got it to overtime. They caught a break. You also have to make the most of your breaks. So if Timo Meier doesn't get called for the hand pass, what if Nyquist doesn't get the puck, doesn't give it to Karlsson, Karlsson doesn't score? St. Louis could be complaining about, the non-call, even though maybe it didn't cost them right there. I'm just saying you have to be good to make the breaks, to create them, and then you have to make the most of them when, in fact, you get them. And it's been the case of the Sharks multiple times in these playoffs. The end of round 1, game 7. All right, so if it's not a 5-minute major, should it be a 4-minute double minor? And the Sharks capitalize twice on 2 different penalties that expire after they score goals? Maybe. I don't know. How about the end of round 2, game 7? Gabe Landeskog went back to the bench, didn't go on to the bench, still on the ice. The officials ruled that he is a player on the ice still, and that he's offside. They take away a goal that changed completely the momentum of that game, and some would say decided the series. Now, going back to round 1 for a second, the Sharks had a 5-minute power play. That doesn't necessarily mean you get to score 4 times. The NHL did not give them 4 goals. Las Vegas did that. Gabe Landeskog, all he had to do was get off the ice, jump over the wall, open the door, get on the bench. He did not do that. And for as good or bad as the evidence was back in round 2, and I want to move on. I want to talk about round 3 and game 3 of round 3 tonight, but there was not conclusive evidence one way or the other. And if you're telling me there is, I'm supposed to believe not even a full HD quality video shot from 85 feet away of a skate blade that's a 1/4 inch wide and a blue line that's that far away. And is he touching it or not? Is his skate hovering over it? Was there too many men on the ice? Anyway, the point is you're going to catch some of these breaks and you have to take advantage of them. The other thing is I go back to some of the questionable calls of tonight. The Perron non-delay of game call and the Sammy Blais non-penalty as he went up high on Justin Braun. So really, more calls, you could say, went to St. Louis than they went to San Jose. It's just that the Sharks came in a most timely fashion. And that is the whole point here. We're all going to get hosed. Every team is going to get hosed at some point in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And especially the further you go, the more opportunities you present yourself to have officiating controversy. I think what the Sharks have had in these playoffs so far is that they've dealt with controversy earlier in games, earlier in series, and when things do happen to even themselves out, it's just been in the most ridiculous, timely fashion that you could even imagine. I hate the notion that I would sit here and sound like a complete homer. Obviously, I have an investment here. Obviously, you know who I'm siding with on a lot of this stuff. But I also don't want to be so blind as to pretend that the Sharks may not benefit from some things. But I also don't want to be so generous and so naive to think that other teams haven't benefited from calls the Sharks don't get or whistles that go the other way. I think we would all be smart enough to just admit, like Pavelski said, it happens widespread. Some are going to go your way, some aren't. Anyway, I'm sorry to go that long on one topic, but I felt like it needed that. Some other storylines, like I talked about before, Erik Karlsson. Not surprised that he got 1 goal tonight. Not surprised that he ends up with 2. He's a player that has been assisting, has been productive. I don't even know what the status of his former groin injury is. Like, he did not look tremendous round 1. I want to say game 3 or 4, and all of a sudden it just seems like he is regenerating. He's getting healthier and stronger as the playoffs go along. He's had some bad games along the way too, but generally speaking, he does not look like an injured player. I guess he's not anymore. I don't know. Joe Thornton. This is a great one to me. Joe Thornton was coming off a pretty rough game 2. Remember when Bortuzzo kind of got around Joe, evaded him, and a lot of people criticized 19 for his coverage defensively on that goal, and also just the lack of production in Game 2 by the third line, by Thornton's third line. I saw the comments on Twitter. Joe's slow. He looks tired. This team looks done. He's too old for this. Maybe Jumbo's lost a step. It's not looking good. What does he do? He's one shy of the Hattie. He's 2 goals shy of that four goal thing everybody's talking about. I don't know why you guys are so fascinated. Something about 4 goals for him. I don't know what you're talking about. But again, Joe Thornton now with 4 goals this postseason, which are the most goals he's ever scored in a single playoffs. Wait a second. Wait, what? Yeah, that's true. And in fact, tonight was his first ever multi-goal playoff game. What? For a guy that's been in the league 21 years, has been in the playoffs, I don't know, a majority of those years. Are you kidding me? And I know he's been a passer most of his career, but the first time ever, 2 goals in a playoff game, and 4 is his highest playoff goal total in any postseason. Pretty ridiculous. So again, a nice redemption story for Joe Thornton coming off the Game 2 that he had in San Jose to rebound here in Game 3. Logan Couture. Oh my goodness. The clutch nature. Couture. He was a guy that in round 1 was part of the Pavelski payback. Scored 2 of the 4 goals. Remember? That's 1. I'm reading his lips there when he said it. And then in round 2, Sharks had alternated a win and a loss in the first 2 games. What does he do at Pepsi Center entering Game 3? He talks that morning about how he was frustrated. He hadn't got on the stat sheet yet in that series against the Avs. All he does that night is get a hat trick. 4-3, San Jose beats the Avs in Game 3, round 2. How about tonight? Right? He's already got a couple goals in this series. And think about last game when he had 2. The only 2 that the Sharks got, and they lost. He is one of the most frustrated guys when he scores and his team loses, especially when he scores multiple goals and his team loses. He must be so much happier tonight after this one, getting the timely goal that sends it to overtime in a game where he contributes to a win. I mean, he has, in every round, magnificent performances, and I'd be stupid to proclaim tonight as his biggest contribution. I don't know what lies ahead. And honestly, if you're thinking, by the way, at 2-1, this series is one-sided or it's over, or that is getting way too far ahead. Because I'm going to talk about this series as a whole and kind of where the Sharks struggled tonight in just a second. Going back to Logan, just to close out this thought. I mean, here's the best way to say it. He's had signature performances in every single round so far. And at 14 goals, I mean, he is making a case. He's making a Conn Smythe case for himself as we go. All right, so what about that second period? And I think the takeaway from this game for the Sharks is a couple things. Why did I stutter so much there? One of the takeaways is that not every win is going to be perfect. In fact, some of them are going to be messy. Some of them are going to be unexpected. Some of them you're just going to put everything you have into the game, and it's it's going to go a bunch of different ways, and you may not really get the result you want until the very end. But the other thing to take away, I think, was they played a poor second period. And I believe that's why, even with the win, right, when Karlsson was able to bury the winning goal, it still felt like they were behind or losing, or even when Pavelski and Couture were out front and they scored the tying goal to send it to overtime, you still feel like, man, it was because it was such an uphill battle after that second period, right? And then the Sharks don't get another goal until 59 seconds left of the third. For basically 40 minutes, it felt like such an uphill climb, right? Because in the second period, Steen comes out and scores to make it from a 2-0 game to a 2-1 game. Then Joe Thornton responds 18 seconds later with his second goal. Okay, you're back in it. Then the missed delay of game call. Then the Blues score 3 more times, once on the power play. They totally take momentum away. And like I said, that's most of the second period. Basically all of the third period, it was an uphill climb. So you felt like even when they tied it and when the Sharks won at 5:23 into OT, it was almost like climbing. Oh my gosh, we're at the top of the mountain and game's over. So I feel like there was that subset, that subliminal thought that even though you just won, it felt like because you've been fighting for so long that it took a second to realize that the Sharks had actually come back and won. But that second period, right, where the Blues got 4 goals on 13 shots, that's not good. I would say that maybe one of the goals goes on Martin Jones. I would say 2 other ones at least, and I'm not going to go into specifics here because it doesn't make sense to talk about video examples that I don't have for you here, but just remembering back, it just seems like one of them, Jones probably would have liked to have had back. Maybe Perron's first one. But there were 2 other ones that I felt like the defense, once again, kind of like last game, opened up a little bit of soft spots and allowed the Blues to get these looks. And I think sometimes you also have to realize it's not always a Sharks defensive mistake. Sometimes it's a really intelligent hockey play by the opposition, and that's how they score. But I think a lot of us look back to the regular season when we saw the Sharks defense be a main factor for their struggles. Odd man rushes, net front chances with unmarked opponents right out front. You could kind of see, and actually I see a comment here, maybe it was Perron's second goal that I apologize. I'm trying to do all this at once here and stay smooth in my speaking. It might have been the second one. Perron had the one-timer that went off Braun's skate. I wrote that down on the power play. Anyway, long story short here, the question of, was it bad goaltending or was it defensive play in front of Jones? And 4 goals on 13 shots does not look complimentary, but that is in fact what happened. I want to say again, I think it was a mixture of both. And how about Martin Jones? His play in the first period to shut out the Blues. And I would also say the defensive play, they held St. Louis to just 4 shots on goal. They didn't even have a shot on goal in the second half of the first period, but Jones also shut out St. Louis entirely in the third period as well. So I'm not chalking this up as a bad game for Martin Jones at all, despite the fact the Blues had 4 goals. It all happened in a short span, a couple mistakes, and that cost the Sharks. But again, that's the bigger point here. It's not always going to be pretty. Think about even a playoff series. You're going to lose some games. You might lose some games back-to-back. The Sharks were in danger tonight of losing back-to-back games for the first time since round 1. They lost 3 in a row. They dug themselves a huge hole. Shouts out to Austin Westbrook, by the way. I am watching the chat sometimes. I see he jumped on the super chat. Threw a little $1.99 out there. I appreciate that. The point is, by the way, if you're listening to this on the podcast, I'm also simulcasting this on YouTube. There is a live chat, which I sometimes peek at, but other times, in order to kind of make this comprehensive and smooth and not disjointed, I kind of have to actually keep my eyes away from that and more on my notes here. So a couple more points here before I close it out. The Sharks have 10 wins in the playoffs. You need 16. Obviously more than halfway there. They are halfway there in terms of this round. They need 2 more wins to go play for the Cup final, which appears like Boston is going to be on the other side. And I don't want to get too much into that. It's not what this video is all about. But the St. Louis Blues, I think their record is 6-2 on the road. Well, they're now 9-7 on the playoffs. So, I mean, they have a losing record. What do they? That mean they're 3-5? Yeah, 3-5 in their home rink in the playoffs. And it's not to say that Friday night's going to be that along those same lines. It's not to say that St. Louis has a disadvantage by playing at home, but they have not been the same team in St. Louis as they have been on the road. That's crazy. It doesn't make sense. I don't understand it. I think they could have won tonight's game. And if they had won tonight's game, I would have said it's more about what the Sharks didn't do than what the Blues actually did. Now, credit to them, they played the contest a majority of the evening with 5 defensemen. Hope Vince Dunn is okay. That was scary. He got hit in the jaw with the puck, kind of collapsed on the bench. Not a great scene. But this is now a situation for San Jose. Game 4, you have to be greedy. You got to be. And Game 4s, as I always say, the result of them are the biggest storyteller of a series. In a sense, that there's 3 different results of Game 4s. One of them we're not going to get a 4-0 sweep, right? No. Maybe on the east side, but not out here in the Western Final. The other 2 results are our possibilities. 3-1 and 2-2. All right, so 3-1, if the Sharks win that, you're headed back to SAP Center for Sunday and a closeout opportunity. At that point, the Blues are facing elimination. They've got to be perfect the rest of the way, right? Like that's a stranglehold on the series. 2-2 is so much different from that. Now, the Sharks are not in a terrible spot. They've got their road win. It's now a best of 3, just like round 2 was, and they've got home ice advantage. So by winning Game 3, the Sharks have put themselves in a beneficial situation. Again, not by any means is it totally tilted in their favor, but they've carved themselves something nice that they've earned here in round 3. So 3-1 or 2-2, this is huge. And again, this is where I think you get greedy. You push for this win, and you hope that you don't even have to go back to St. Louis. All right, that's going to do it for this video. Again, Thornton with 2 goals, Karlsson with 2 goals, Logan Couture with the most timely goal of maybe his 14, right? He had those 2 in round 1. Those were timely, I suppose, but nothing like, and he had the hat trick in round 2, but nothing like less than a minute left to send a game into overtime and a contest you eventually won. Just a lot of great stories. And I hope that all of you who were following this team back in 2016 when they went to the Stanley Cup final, I hope all of you are, as much as you're stressed out and as much as all the storylines are overwhelming and as much as everybody is focusing on a lot of different things right now, I hope in some way you're able to just slow things down, breathe this in for a second, and soak this in where you're at right now. It's not over. There's a lot of work left to be done. This series could totally change. But how many times are the Sharks in the Final 4 of hockey? How many times are they the only game on in the league on a night-to-night basis like they have been so far with the East and West alternating evenings? It doesn't happen every year, right? So I'm saying while you're here, yes, get greedy. Push for this. Push for the Stanley Cup final. Push for the first time in history, San Jose with the opportunity to maybe lift a Stanley Cup. Push for all that. But simultaneously, take all this in while you're here, right? I think it's important to do that, and I think Logan Couture in his comments all along, being here should be a small piece of a reward, but what it should mostly do is inspire you for even more, right? It's almost like putting just a little bit more gas in your tank. You've used a lot of it. It's been a long season. It's been a long postseason already. But it kind of gives you a little bit gas back. Put more of that gas back in the tank and keep going. So enjoy it, keep going. And yeah, these playoffs, in a lot of ways, are feeling special. That does it for the podcast. That does it for this YouTube video. Check me out on Twitter, Instagram, the Gram. I've been working hard there with Instagram stories and posts on a daily basis. Also here on the YouTube channel, throw me a subscribe if you would, or like this video if you in fact did. Also the podcast, it's out on a pretty regular basis on Apple iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, or TuneIn Radio. So until next time, I appreciate you watching and listening. I'm Brody Brazil. And yes, that is my real name. And since you're still watching the YouTube video, that was the end of the audio-only portion. So yeah, guys, this has been real. It's been real exciting. It has not been easy. None of this has been easy. And if the Sharks are to win the Cup this time around, I think we're gonna reminisce on all the difficult, oh my goodness moments. Tonight being one of them, round 1, game 7 being one of them, a couple times in round 2 being one of them. This stuff is crazy. I can't say I've seen as much craziness in a single playoffs by any team of anything I've ever covered or been around. So enjoy it. If you're watching this live, try and get some sleep. If you're enjoying it on Thursday or Friday, thanks for coming back and subscribe to the channel. All right? Have a good evening.